Hello there. Welcome in. Glad to have you, whether you're listening on Extra Sports 1300, 740 KVOR, the streaming apps of those two fine radio stations, which are free to download and free to use, or if you're watching the show on any one of the social media platforms that are so popular these days, anywhere you scroll, you can find this show. I am bringing with me a veritable cornucopia of sports topics, and I would love to get your thoughts. You could call or text into the show at 719-247-1313, or if you are watching the show anywhere you scroll, you can also drop a comment right there, and we'll incorporate it into the program. Seamless through the wonders of technology. Speaking of the wonders of technology, and I mean that in the opposite sense, like when technology is bad and garbage and ruins lives, let's talk about the U.S. men's national team last night. I'll just say right off the top, that's not a red card. It's not a red card on Flo Balogun. It's not. Was it a little clumsy? Sure. Did he have the best interests of his counterpart from Bosnia and Herzegovina in his mind? No. But there was no, if you're going to kick a guy out of the game, and this applies to every sport here, if you're going to kick a guy out of the game, it has to be something so egregious that has intent behind it. That kicking a guy out of a game, that's the right punishment for somebody who intentionally injures somebody else. Flo Balogun had no intention whatsoever of hurting the player on Bosnia and Herzegovina. He was going for the ball, was not as graceful as he usually is. It looked bad, right? And I feel for the guy on Bosnia and Herzegovina. That had to be painful, but that's not a red card. That's not an offense where you say you are not allowed to play with your friends anymore. And guess what? The referee on the field didn't think it was a red card either. So here I am once again, trying to protect everybody from the future where the machines take over and we are merely servants to those machines. We are not meant as human beings to be able to adjudicate things when they are slowed down to 1/1,000,000th of a frame and going little bit by little bit. Okay, we are not meant to be adjudicating things that happen in sports the way that we adjudicate things in sports with video replay review. And there's nuanced differences between VAR and video replay review that we have in our North American sports. I mean, VAR is kind of like some some replay review, but also kind of eye in the sky stuff. The fact of the matter is, and these are in the rules of soccer, you can't judge a red card on a freeze frame or slowing a replay down to 1/1,000,000th of a second. They misapplied the use of VAR. And this is what I always say. We have this technology. It is technology that our forefathers would pass out trying to comprehend the technology that is at our fingertips. But we constantly misuse it, especially in the world of sports, which is really what matters more than anything else. What other aspect of our lives matters nearly as much as sport? We don't wield this technology properly. And if we're going to ignore the rules that are on the books of how we use this technology, it's even worse. In no world was Flo Balogun deserved to be sent off. A yellow card? Absolutely. You warn him. Okay? You're going to be clumsy like that. You're going to do anything close to that, and you're going to be gone. In fact, players on a yellow card get a second yellow for less. So Balogun would have to be on his absolute best behavior, and nobody would have pushed back against that notion at all. And maybe Pochettino has to sub him out at some point. But for them to go straight red there is completely and utterly egregious. And the fact that now the U.S. is playing arguably the biggest match in the history of American soccer without Flo Balogun for something like that, that's garbage. That's absolute and utter garbage. Now, I still think that the U.S. can beat Belgium without Balogun. The lineup is going to be very interesting. Okay, because I don't know that you just go straight Ricardo Pepi into that spot. I don't think it's that simple. But so Mauricio Pochettino has some thinking to do over the weekend. I think it's going to be a very different looking formation. Maybe the names will be similar, but they'll be configured in a much different way, I believe. But we'll see come Monday night. I still think that the U.S. without Balogun can beat Belgium. Okay, because I actually believe that the best thing to happen to the U.S. men's national team yesterday was that Belgium rallied to beat Senegal, because Senegal would be a more difficult matchup for the U.S. than Belgium is. I know there's history with Belgium, but it was a million years ago, and this team is older. A lot of the same names, De Bruyne, Lukaku, they're still there, but this is an older team. I don't think they're nearly as dynamic as Senegal. I don't think they're as physically opposing as Senegal is. It's a better matchup for the U.S. So if the fates decided that Balogun was going to get wrongly sent off, it's better that it happened with the matchup against Belgium next rather than Senegal. So my belief in the U.S. men's national team getting to the quarterfinals, which, by the way, it's the dividing line between smashing success and bitter disappointment. And that doesn't change with Balogun being out, by the way. Well, I'm not lowering the bar just because of this. I could be upset at the decision that was wrongly made and get on my soapbox once again about video replay review and how we don't deserve it because we don't use it properly. But I can also say all that and then say that the U.S. should still find a way to beat Belgium. And if they do, this is a success, and you take your shot against, it looks like Spain, and oh boy, I just got done watching Spain. They're really good. But you know what? That's tomorrow's problem. You know, Spain's got to get through the round of 16 as well. This is a huge match coming up on Monday, and for the officials, virtual or real, to interject themselves at this juncture in the tournament in this way is why people add on to the corruption that FIFA, we already know that FIFA is incredibly corrupt, but this is where, you know, people get conspiratorial about it. I'm not going there. I'm just saying it's absolute nonsense and garbage that Balogun was sent off. But the U.S. can still win on Monday night, and they can still go through to the quarterfinals, and they will get Flo Balogun back at that time, which they will desperately need him, because any possible matchup that I can see for the U.S. in the quarterfinals and beyond, they have to have Balogun to win. Belgium, I think they still have enough. I really do. Now, back to last night. Beating Bosnia and Herzegovina in itself, and I was having this conversation with somebody today, that win is not incredibly impressive. The fact that they beat Bosnia is not incredibly impressive. Okay, but one of the prevailing storylines that we keep seeing throughout this World Cup for the U.S. men's national team, it's about how they're winning. It's not that they beat Paraguay, it's that they dominated them. It's not that they beat Australia, it's that they dominated them for 45 minutes and kept a clean sheet. It's not that they beat Bosnia, it's that they beat Bosnia down to 10 men, the guy they're missing being one of their best players. And when they were down to 10 men, they looked equally as dangerous as Bosnia looked with 11. But Bosnia came in with an idea. They were just, which makes you more frustrated about the red card, because there were so many, and you've seen them all over social media, so many highlights from this game where you're going, Bosnia did that, and that's not a red card, but what Balogun did is. Bosnia came in, and they wanted to just be physical at a level that the U.S. had not seen yet in this tournament. I mean, it was like, if you're a hockey fan, Bosnia was 11 Tom Wilsons. Just a bunch of goons out there trying to completely take the U.S. mentally out of their game by beating them up physically. That was clearly the plan from the get-go. And then you throw on top of it a very controversial red card. And those variables would cause a lesser team to crater. The frustration that they had with the referee before, and then culminating with the red card, the frustration over the way that Bosnia was playing them, all of that stuff, that red card could have been a breaking point. And the opportunity that Bosnia needed to get back into it. But immediately when that happened, right, they were going to show Mauricio Pochettino. And what I saw from Pochettino was righteous indignation, certainly, but it wasn't over the top. Maybe it was because he was in disbelief over the whole thing, but he didn't melt down. And I think by extension, his team didn't melt down. They stayed composed. And they went out there and they played despite being down a player, and again, were as good, if not better, with 10 men than Bosnia was with 11. So the way this team continues to win is what's so impressive, and what makes you feel like this team is different. And they have another chance to do that, because if they're able to win, and I believe they can against Belgium, but if they win without Balogun, it's going to be another one of those matches where they're like, this team's different, and that confidence level, that belief is just going to grow that much more, and you're going to look at a potential matchup with Spain and go, yeah, Spain is loaded. They're one of the co-favorites in this tournament for a reason. Lamine Yamal is one of the up and coming players and probably already one of the best players in the world, but is going to be at an even higher level when the dude's like 15 years old and he's incredible. He's not 15, but my point is he could get a lot better. Like, think of what Neymar was when he was a teenager. It's that, and some people think he could be better. So Spain's ridiculously good. Okay, but every team that you're going to face potentially in the quarterfinals is ridiculously good. But you're going to have that little extra belief where you're like, you know what? Maybe, because this team is so wildly different than the ones you have witnessed before, even though much of the same guys are on this team that were on the team in 2022. But Monday it will be the U.S. and Belgium. They will do it without Flo Balogun. I will take your thoughts. Impressive the way that the U.S. handled themselves and were still able to play even without Balogun. And I didn't even talk about Tillman's free kick, which was, just obscenely good. And a big goal, by the way. Huge goal for the U.S. So, yes, the red card is the biggest story, and it's egregious, and it's terrible, and it triggers me in a way that few other things in sports do. But overall, impressive evening again for Mauricio Pochettino's side. Take your thoughts at 719-247-1313. Coming up next, why we have so many just dumb trades in the NBA right now. We are seeing so many just dumb trades in the NBA right now. You notice this? You catching on to this phenomenon? We have had so many trades where you just look and you go, what? And there are two that take the cake. And the similarities are certainly there between the Luka trade and the one that the Celtics just made yesterday in dealing Jaylen Brown to the Philadelphia 76ers. There are similarities. And I'll give you one of them because it's the overarching theme of any of these trades that you see in the NBA and you go, why in the world is Team A making that trade? Couldn't they get more? You remember a time, I don't know, a decade ago, time, flies when you're whatever it is that I'm doing with my life. And I remember an offseason where the NBA was just handing out the worst contracts you had ever seen. Like guys that were averaging like 3 to 5 points a game were getting 20, 25 million, which at the time was a lot of money. Right? And the owners said, I mean, they're the ones that are paying it, but they're the ones that said this can't continue. Right? And then shortly thereafter, you have the super team era with LeBron, and here's their chance to do something quite drastic to the financial model of the NBA to try to kill both of those birds with one stone. That they don't have to give out ridiculous contracts and there will be no more super teams. And the first step to that was the Supermax. Right? You draft a guy, you develop him, you have the inside track to keep him because you can offer him more money than anybody else can. Thought it worked pretty well. I liked the Supermax. But then the NBA got greedy. And it went a step too far, and it created this apron system that is in place right now. Right? Because before it was, well, you just want to be able to have some kind of competitive advantage in free agency over the Lakers, the Celtics, the Heat, so on and so forth, right? If you're Milwaukee, if you're Denver, you want something at your disposal to be able to tell a star player there are benefits to staying with us. And then that morphed into, well, not everyone can find a superstar of their own. So we just want to put other things in place to create the parity that the NFL has. And that's the apron system, and that's what we're seeing right now. But now this apron system is claiming another victim, which is the guys that are being signed to Supermaxes. Luka, Jaylen Brown. Okay, because in the wake of the Jaylen Brown trade, there's a lot of reporting coming out that Jaylen Brown was this, Jaylen Brown was that. He was the smartest guy in the room. Well, he went to freaking Cal, Colin. So, I mean, what do you expect, the guy? Aaron Rodgers still gets gainful employment, and he's just as bad, if not worse. So he's the smartest guy in the room. They didn't view Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum as a viable championship duo and so on and so forth. All this kind of stuff, after the fact to try and make Boston look better than they're looking right now. And you can sift through it. And some of it, you go, okay, I can kind of, and here's the one, him being the smartest guy in the room, that's just a stupid thing. Okay. If you're threatened by somebody who's more intelligent, higher educated than you, then that's a you problem, not a problem with them. But let's take the idea that Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are no longer a viable championship duo. I would kind of push back against that, but that's like an actual basketball reason. Much like Luka not playing defense is a legitimate basketball reason to maybe have some trepidation about centering your entire organization around Luka. I'm not saying it's the reason why you don't. I'm just saying it's enough to make you at least ponder it, right? And there was another stupid reason on top of that, which was, him being in shape or whatever. Like the dude was out of shape and he was still carrying the Dallas Mavericks to the NBA Finals. So whatever. So the point here is we have these teams that are twisting themselves into a pretzel from a logical standpoint to try and justify why a guy is not worth the money. And that's basically what this boils down to, whether it's because he has a complex where he's got to be the smartest guy in the room, whether doesn't get along with Jason Tatum, whether, it's not a viable duo anymore, by whatever reasoning you want. But it's the Boston Celtics trying to talk themselves into this guy's not worth the money. That's what this comes down to. Jaylen Brown, for whatever reason, in the minds of the Boston Celtics and maybe a few other teams, is not worth the money. Which is an insane thing to think for a league that was spending money like drunken sailors just a decade ago. And I think that there's an influence from private equity and all this kind of, new money coming into the NBA. But we like this guy, but he's making a lot of money. And now because we went too far, we did this to ourselves. We created this apron structure. Now this very good idea, which is the Supermax, now we don't like it anymore because Jaylen Brown and Luka can make more money with the Dallas Mavericks and the Boston Celtics. So they need to go elsewhere where they can make less money. That's what's behind all of this. And it's causing teams, again, Dallas and Boston, to make trades that are completely unconscionable from a basketball standpoint. And the reason why they are unconscionable more than anything else is the return. It's the return. And I remember when Luka got traded, my biggest issue with Dallas trading Luka was not the fact that they traded him. It's that they got nothing of value in return. The return you looked at from the Lakers and you went, really? That's all you're going to get for a guy who is one of the 5 best players in the league and carried you to an NBA Finals appearance? This is all you're going to get? It's the same thing here with the Jaylen Brown trade. It's not necessarily the fact that the Boston Celtics decided that Jaylen Brown wasn't worth it anymore. It's that they thought that good value, worthwhile value to make a trade right now was Paul George and some picks. That's my biggest issue with the Jaylen Brown trade, above the fact that you're basically, and Dallas did this as well. Dallas basically allowed the Lakers to become better than them. They said, it's fine. Go ahead, surpass us. And the Lakers did, and they have, and they will remain there. Same thing with Boston. They traded Jaylen Brown to the Philadelphia 76ers. Now the Sixers are unquestionably the biggest threat to New York next year in the Eastern Conference. And Boston has taken a step back to the point that they're in the middle of the pack. So, yeah, there are other bad reasons. I mean, there's a lot of negative around this, but what I put at the top of the list is you just didn't, for a team that has Tyrese Maxey and VJ Edgecombe, and reportedly they asked for those guys and were told no, then you say, you know what? To heck with you, we're calling someone else. But some of the trades that are going on right now in the NBA, we're grasping at straws, trying to wrap our heads around why these trades are happening. Why would you just give away a player of Jaylen Brown's quality, of Luka Doncic's quality? They're not perfect players, but my God, you got to get more in return than that. But this is what's behind it. The apron system. Jaylen Brown is too expensive for the, private equity ran Boston Celtics organization. That's what this boils down to. Luka was too expensive for the Mavericks because they would have to go in the second apron. But who created the second apron? It wasn't the players. They went too far. And now we're all suffering because of it. Well, not LA and Philly, but in general, we're suffering because we're looking at these trades that have no good reason behind why they're being made. But I think the Jaylen Brown trade and the Luka trade are very similar. There are reasons, but they're not good enough reasons to trade the guy. And there's certainly not good enough reasons to basically give him away for nothing. That's what the Mavericks did with Luka, and that's what the Boston Celtics have done with Jaylen Brown. 719-247-1313. What do you think about my assertion that the Sixers are the biggest threat to New York in the East? And I don't even think it's that complicated. They absolutely are. I'll take your pushback if you have any. 719-247-1313. So the NBA has taken center stage with its free agency period, but that does not mean that the NHL lacks for intrigue. Now, the Avalanche, on a local note, have made their signing of Jaden Schwartz official. And to me, it simply comes down to if Jaden Schwartz is available, he's a really good pickup in the bottom six of this Avalanche team. And if Joe Sakic can keep flexibility to be able to do what this organization has done repeatedly over the last few years, whether it's Arturi Lehkonen, Nazem Kadri, Josh Manson, and Nick Waugh, the list goes on. If the Avs can make this move with Jaden Schwartz and still have the ability to peruse the market around the trade deadline and improve their hockey team, then I'm all for it. And Joe Sakic said this when he was meeting with the media. You don't win in July. You don't. There are teams that grab headlines, and, you know, the one that really sticks out to me just from recent memory is Nashville. Man, I loved what Nashville did a couple years ago. I mean, they got Stamkos and Marchessault, and they were just loading up on name brands. You know, like this is going to, and you knew that they were a little bit older, right? They weren't necessarily at the height of their powers, but still, I mean, these are significant names and they're all going to one team, and Nashville is going to be set up. They're going to be a good team this year, and it is all falling apart. And now Chris McFarland's trying to rebuild it by, you know, taking on Ross Colton and Jack Drury and who knows who else he wants to pry away from the Colorado Avalanche. But this trade deadline thing has worked for the Avs. And so if Jaden Schwartz is not going to inhibit their ability to be able to make moves at the deadline, then it's a good pickup. Now, the Avs certainly were not the busiest team on the first day of free agency. There are a lot of notable moves. One development that's going on in the Central Division I think is interesting. Is Utah better than Dallas right now? Utah took a big step forward, finally got into the postseason with this young core of players. And then what did they do? They went out yesterday and they added vets. They said, okay, we got a taste of this playoff thing. Our young players are going to be better for it, but now we need guys that will show them the way. And they get Anders Lee from the Islanders, but the big move is Vinny Trocheck that they bring in. And I thought Trocheck didn't want to go west, but apparently, you know, he tried that at the deadline and didn't end up going anywhere. So it's like, okay, maybe I'll expand to the west. But I love what Utah did. I love what they did. And it's not the thing with Nashville a couple of years ago was that they were trying to remake the team with these kind of players and say, let's go get into the playoffs. And it didn't work. Utah already has the core of a team that is playoff caliber. Now you're augmenting it with these veteran players at positions of need. You're looking at an Anaheim, you're looking at Utah, San Jose even. I know San Jose didn't make the playoffs, but you're looking at these young teams and you're saying, okay, which one of these teams takes a step forward? Which one of them was a bit of a mirage? Which one's going to backslide? I think that the moves that Utah made certainly signal that they're going to be competing this year. Now, I don't think that they're on the Avalanche level right now. They haven't surpassed Colorado at the top of the division, but I very much wonder if they've surpassed Dallas. And it's not because Dallas wasn't good to begin with. Dallas is only losing players. They don't know that they're going to have Jason Robertson. They were trying to trade him to Seattle, so it doesn't look like he's going to be returning. They struck out on Zach Werenski. It wasn't their fault. They got a deal done, and then Zach Werenski's like, actually, I'm not leaving Columbus. I'm not bleeping leaving. So Dallas has been striking out in trying to trade Jason Robertson, trying to trade for Zach Werenski. They lose Mason Marchment, who goes to San Jose, who I will talk about momentarily. Like, Dallas isn't getting better. Utah is. Now, this doesn't mean that and we learned this with the Minnesota Timberwolves this year with the Denver Nuggets. This does not mean that the Avs are done with Dallas being a thorn in their side. It is still very possible that Dallas with Heiskanen and with Ottinger and Rantanen healthy, that they could still be a tough out for the Colorado Avalanche. But I'm just looking at the pecking order, and I'm saying, like, maybe Utah can slide up a spot. Really like what they did. Dallas, they're trying. I got to give Jim Nill at least that level of credit. It's not their fault. If it were up to them, Jason Robertson would be on the Seattle Kraken and Zach Werenski would be on the Dallas Stars. But I think they've slipped a little bit. Winnipeg, we still don't know what's going to happen with Connor Hellebuck, but if he's gone, not that Winnipeg is a legit threat, but if Connor Hellebuck goes to Buffalo or someplace like that, I mean, you don't even need to bother. And then there's obviously Minnesota with the full season of Quinn Hughes, but they haven't, and Dylan Larkin's still sitting out there. We're just a day or two into free agency, so things can change. But as I'm looking at the landscape in specifically the Central Division, I think that the Avs stabilized their lineup, right? And with Jaden Schwartz, with the guys they got back from Nashville. So I think they're still at the top. I really like Utah. I may be going a little bit too far with them to say that they're now in the conversation with Minnesota and Dallas, because there was a lot of separation last year. I just really like what Utah has done. And the Central certainly gets more interesting. San Jose, kind of in the same vein. I don't think anyone was expecting San Jose to be as good as they were this year. And they still weren't good enough to make the playoffs. But that team turned some heads this year. Macklin Celebrini was phenomenal. And they got the dude in Macklin Celebrini. So Greer, trying to strike while the iron is hot, goes out and again kind of does the same thing. Let me look for veterans to augment a very young roster. And look, Jacob Trouba, Mason Marchment, Darnell Nurse, these are all players of quality. Oilers fans, I know what you're thinking. Darnell Nurse is talented. Okay, but it goes back to the Jaylen Brown thing. Is he $8.5 million a year talented? Or is he half that talented? But they get veteran players that should help this team push forward to try and get into the playoffs. But man, did San Jose overpay. They don't make the Oilers take a single red cent back. There's no retention. Darnell Nurse is going with his full contract to San Jose. Marchment, they signed for $7 million a year. Trouba gets 8 years with San Jose. Like, I like this group this year. I hate this team 3 or 4 years down the road. It may not even take that long. Like San Jose, they may have a 2-year window, and then these contracts are going to look absolutely horrendous. Probably about the time they have to pay Macklin Celebrini. That's exactly when it will be. So I like the moves for now. I hate them for the future. So Macklin Celebrini, whatever you're going to do, you better do it now. And then a notable move that was made on the first day of free agency that I don't know that it moves the needle. Sergei Bobrovsky going to Toronto. We know Toronto perpetually has goaltending issues. I don't know that Sergei Bobrovsky at 47 years old is 37, excuse me. That was not me trying to make a joke. I legitimately just said the wrong age. I don't know that because here's the thing. Bobrovsky existed in Florida in this kind of mode. Regular season, postseason, he was Bobo. Okay? The problem in Toronto is that they need a guy that can get them to the playoffs. If Toronto can get to the playoffs, then Bobrovsky, even at his age, gets interesting. But they need a guy I know no one plays 82 games anymore, or even close to it as a goaltender, but they need somebody they need an answer in goal for the 82 game stretch before they can even think about the postseason stretch. I'm not saying that there was a blatantly obvious better option out there. It's just you get Bobrovsky. I thought the fit for Bobrovsky would be a team that you say, oh, of course they're going to be in the playoffs. And that's what they're acquiring him for. I don't think Toronto can make the playoffs this year. But that was another move that caught my eye. But things were fast and furious on the first day of free agency. Things have died down. Another big item of note today, of course, Alexander Ovechkin will be coming back for Washington. I thought this was the most likely outcome when the Capitals went out and got Alex Tuch, got Jordan Kyrou. I don't know if those moves were made to convince Alexander Ovechkin to come back necessarily, but they were moves that signaled to me that Washington was expecting to have Ovechkin back. Moves that you make with Ovechkin in mind to try and get as far as you possibly can in what will be the last year of his career. I don't know if Ovechkin was on the fence and in those moves convinced him, yeah, I'll come back. I think they were made with the idea that Ovechkin was coming back. And we'll see. I mean, everyone in this happens in free agency, right? Everyone's talking about, oh, I love what this team did. I love what this team did. Watch out for them. Last time I checked, there's still only 8 playoff spots. If you're going to put one of these teams, like let's take San Jose, for instance. Again, I like what not long term, that they're going to rue the Mason Marchment, Jacob Trouba, and Darnell Nurse in a couple of years. But right now, I like it. I like what they add to the team. And I think that San Jose is better than they were at the end of the season. But the problem is somebody's got to get out of the postseason for them to get in. I guess the simple thing would be Anaheim takes a step back, which is possible, but it's just, if you like the moves that these teams made and they didn't make the playoffs a year ago, you got to find that team that's going to fall out of the postseason to be able to put them in, vis-a-vis, i.e. the Toronto Maple Leafs. Maybe you like them adding Bobrovsky, but is it enough to make somebody fall out? 719-247-1313. Your thoughts to the start of NHL free agency. Coming up next, why it's getting to be, if the Nuggets don't end up landing LeBron, it's going to be really, really bad. That's next. Welcome in. Great to have you. Appreciate you watching the show as you can across all social media platforms that will allow us to stream. Still waiting to hear back from MySpace, but everywhere else, I think we're good to go. As long as you follow at Extra Sports 1300 at 740 KVOR, or you can follow me at Ginge Watch on Instagram would be probably the best place to go. Also at Gingerly Tweets on X. While you are there, please drop a comment, be a part of the conversation. If you are listening to the show on Extra Sports 1300 or KVOR, I haven't forgotten about you. You could call or text into the show at 719-247-1313. The Nuggets have made a move. They have added a player to the team. It is Marvin Bagley. Not impressed? I don't blame you. The Nuggets have been one of the quietest teams to begin free agency, and their foray into the NBA's offseason is to add Marvin Bagley. And look, I'm not saying that he's not an intriguing player. We see the Avalanche do this all the time. They take a former first-round pick and they say, with our coaching and our system, we can get the most out of him. The problem is, I believe in the system the Nuggets run because the system is Nikola Jokic. The problem is Marvin Bagley will be playing most of his minutes without Nikola Jokic on the court, and I don't believe in the coach for the Denver Nuggets. So I don't know that Marvin Bagley is going to work out, but whatever. Right? Like, that's kind of the way I look at this. Okay, if Marvin Bagley is essentially going to take the spot of Jonas Valanciunas, Jonas Valanciunas is a better player than Marvin Bagley. And I think we can say, with Jonas Valanciunas shortly to be departing the Denver Nuggets, that it was not a smashing success. He did not fix their non-Jokic minute problem. David Adelman didn't want to play the guy in the postseason. And maybe you're against David Adelman on that, but you have to say that Jonas Valanciunas didn't really work out, and there is a real possibility here that no one who backs up Nikola Jokic will ever be good enough. And there are a few reasons for that. One, because there's no way they're going to be even close to as good as Nikola Jokic. But also, there just aren't that many guys on the cheap that you can get. Okay, have you seen how were some of the guys? Look at what Mitchell Robinson signed for. Look at what Robert Williams signed for. Big men aren't cheap. And the Nuggets are trying to be cheap because they have to be cheap. So, forgive me if I'm not, and I've gotten multiple texts about, what do you think of Marvin Bagley? I'll like him. I'll tell you, if I like Marvin Bagley, I'll like Marvin Bagley when LeBron James is on the Denver Nuggets. I would like Marvin Bagley more if Jaylen Brown was on the Denver Nuggets. Like, Marvin Bagley is not making the difference. And I don't want to even put that on the guy. The guy's just trying to rebuild his career. And I like Bagley a lot coming out of Duke. It just hasn't worked. He landed in some really bad spots, including Sacramento, which is about the worst place that you could possibly go if you have long-term ideas of being a successful NBA player. So I like Bagley, and I like some of his game. It makes sense. Basically, you are up getting a better version of Zeke Naji. That's not going to make the difference between the Denver Nuggets beating San Antonio and OKC and not. But that's where we're at right now. They tried it. They tried the thing. They swapped Porter for Cam Johnson. It opened up flexibility. They got Tim Hardaway Jr. They got Jonas Valanciunas. They brought back Bruce Brown. It didn't work. They're no closer to winning a title than they were 12 months ago. Now, I don't fault them for trying. I'm just saying it maybe there's a different path here. So I'll like Marvin Bagley if the Denver Nuggets fix the real issues that plague this team. They're never going to fix the non-Jokic minutes. Never. The one time I thought they had a chance before Jonas Valanciunas was when they had Boogie Cousins, and that blew up because Boogie Cousins is Boogie Cousins. They're just never going to fix that. And they shouldn't be trying that hard. Okay, there are bigger issues with this team. So, yeah, Marvin Bagley, he's fine. Not moving the needle at all for the Denver Nuggets. And this is where we have arrived. Because not only do you have the LeBron carrot being dangled, right, by Brian Windhorst saying they could be an outlier team, and then you start to, oh, you remember that Jokic's agent and LeBron were hanging out on a yacht, and the caption was, the summer of 2025 is good for planning things for fall of 2026. And you start to go through it and you're like, there are little breadcrumbs around here. They're just crumbs, but you pick them all up and you're like, maybe this is going to lead the Denver Nuggets to LeBron James. Okay, it's certainly more of a realistic possibility now than it ever has been. Right? And then you're looking at the trade that the Boston Celtics consummated, sending Jaylen Brown to the Philadelphia 76ers. And I don't know about you, I'm wondering why the Nuggets couldn't match that offer. Why couldn't they match that offer? Could have gotten Jaylen Brown. And I get it. You are a little bit hesitant to trade Jaylen Brown for Jamal Murray because it's exacerbating one of the bigger issues on your team, which is ball handling. I grant you, Jaylen Brown is a better basketball player than Jamal Murray. Yes, you would have to go out and now maybe find multiple ball handlers. I'm just saying with how little the Sixers paid for Jaylen Brown, I'm like, there's got to be some way. I mean, could one argue that Cam Johnson would be more valuable than Paul George? Now, that doesn't make the money completely work, but Cam Johnson alone better than Paul George, both on expiring contracts. So you start from there. But it wasn't much that they gave up. So the Sixers didn't have to give up much to get a star player to make themselves the biggest threat to New York in the Eastern Conference. So you have the Jaylen Brown trade, you have the LeBron rumors, and I'm seeing it on social media, and I'm hearing it from friends and family. And the longer this goes, by the way, the worse it's going to get. Right? It kind of, doesn't it feel like if it was Cleveland, he would just go? Right? Just go. You're going to Cleveland. Fine. We all get it. We understand that. End where it started, all that. I don't know that he wants to go to Cleveland. Not because he has anything against the Cavaliers or Donovan Mitchell and James Harden, specifically James Harden, is on that team. How is that actually going to work with James Harden and LeBron James on the same basketball team? Because I thought part of why LeBron is leaving LA is because he was playing with a player in Luka that had to have the ball in his hands at all times. That's James Harden. So how's that going to work? Right? And then you look at the Golden State thing. And it's a nice story and it's kind of interesting, but they're not winning anything. They're not even coming close to winning anything. And LeBron still wants to win. And then you got Miami. It's like Miami is half a roster. It's Giannis, it's Bam, and now it's Tim Hardaway Jr. That's what they have. Meanwhile, Boston still has Jason Tatum. Philadelphia had a Tyrese Maxey and VJ Edgecombe, and they've added Jaylen Brown. You have the defending NBA champions in the East. The Toronto Raptors get Kawhi Leonard. Like, this is what I said after the Heat acquired Giannis. Like, you get Giannis and you figure the rest out, but you're fooling yourself into thinking that in one offseason the Heat can acquire Giannis and create a team around him that is capable of challenging the upper echelon teams in the East. And I haven't even brought up Cleveland and Detroit in terms of how good they are. So this is not an easy decision for LeBron James. There's no guarantee he's going to be able to win in Miami. He won't win in Golden State. Cleveland, he's essentially trading the same situation for LA in Cleveland. It's going to drive LeBron James crazy playing with James Harden. In fact, I don't know how anybody can play with James Harden, if I'm being quite honest, but LeBron James is going to hate that. So the Denver thing, it's viable. I'm not saying it's ultimately what he decides to do, but this isn't, just suspending all reality here. But because of the Nuggets' inactivity, because of LeBron, because of the paltry trade package that Boston got in return for Philadelphia, it's like, Nuggets, you got to do something. And every day that goes by, there are few, like Kessler's off the board, Kawhi's off the board, Conley's off the board. Like, it's getting to the point where it's LeBron or nothing. And when that matzo ball is out there, simply bringing back Peyton Watson is not going to be viewed as this huge successful offseason for the Denver Nuggets. It will not be good if the Nuggets don't find a way to land LeBron James. And look, again, there are a lot of imperfect landing spots for him. Okay, and yes, California and Miami, and I get it. Like, there are advantages to some of these places, no state tax, beautiful weather, all that kind of stuff. I get all that. But, like, at some point, Nikola Jokic has to be a real bargaining chip for the Denver Nuggets. How they can't convince somebody to come and play with this guy, like somebody of substance to come and play with this guy, is beyond me. The Cronkies have an entire sports empire that they can appeal to LeBron James' business side, right? We know LeBron, had a share of Liverpool. He wants to be the owner of the Las Vegas NBA franchise. Like, there's got to be some. I'm not saying that you offer this to him because the Kawhi aspiration thing. We're not talking about circumventing the salary cap, but can you say, like, hey, you'll be a part of this in this way, and who knows, maybe down the line we have this kind of working relationship that maybe we can help you get into ownership in the NFL. I don't know if that alone is cap circumvention, and maybe it's not something that you say, but can that appeal somewhat to LeBron James? I mean, LeBron's a smart guy. Think he's unaware of all the holdings that the Cronkies have in professional sports? And this came up before LeBron went to, LA. He does have a relationship with Josh Kroenke. I saw something today that a big thing for Philadelphia, which has now entered the chat when it comes to LeBron. And I mean, a lot of mouths to feed there in Philadelphia, but I don't think it's a bad landing spot for LeBron by any stretch of the imagination. But they're saying, well, Tyrese Maxey would be a reason why LeBron would want to go there. Okay, like working with your buddy is nice. What if you were buddies with the boss? Isn't that a better work life? That your boss is your buddy? Josh Kroenke is his buddy. He would be his boss. So all of these things have got to add up at some point. And if not for 41 going on 42-year-old LeBron James, who has his choice of imperfect options, because no one's going to make him the focal point of what they're doing. I mean, at some point, the Nuggets got to reel in one of these guys. 719-247-1313. What if the Nuggets don't get LeBron? How will you feel looking at all the other players going off the board left and right? 719-247-1313. More after this. It really is going to be LeBron or nothing for the Denver Nuggets this offseason, I fear. Another move that is just breaking now, which is chalk one up to running it back. Tyus Jones is coming back to the Denver Nuggets, according to Shams Charania. Joined the team in the middle of the season as a buyout. David Adelman liked what he brought as far as a secondary ball handler to Jamal Murray. So Tyus Jones back with the club. So Jones is back. Hardaway's gone. Valanciunas is gone. Marvin Bagley back. Or not back, but Marvin Bagley joining the Nuggets, and maybe, I mean, it's like history repeating itself almost, because now there are rumors that maybe the Nuggets will bring back Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, who could be bought out. Oops, we made a mistake by letting Kentavious Caldwell-Pope go. 2 years later, we'll bring him back. After we paid Christian Brown $25 million a year, and when Kentavious Caldwell-Pope is not the player that he was even a couple of years ago. But this is what it is for the Denver Nuggets. They're going to essentially run it back. Maybe some of the names change, right? Bagley for Valanciunas, but same idea, same types of players. And if they can get LeBron, then they'll add LeBron to the mix. If they don't get him, there's nobody else. And I have said I can buy into what the Nuggets have if they add LeBron to it. I'm not buying into virtually a carbon copy of the team that we saw last year being any better equipped to knock off Oklahoma City, San Antonio, or even Minnesota for that matter. Because the Nuggets had Tyus Jones and Jaden McDaniels still ate Jamal Murray's lunch. So tell me why bringing back Tyus Jones and having him for a full season is somehow going to move the needle for the Denver Nuggets. It's not. But they just don't have, in their mind, any other choice. I hate to say they have no other choice, because they do. You absolutely could have made the same move that Philadelphia made for Jaylen Brown. Now, does it make you complete? Can you say that you're better? But look at what Minnesota did. Right? I applaud what Minnesota did, because you know what? They said, well, all these moves may not make us better, but we're different. And if we're different, maybe we're different enough that something breaks for us and we're at least trying something. The Nuggets, if you trade Jamal Murray for Jaylen Brown, I'm not guaranteeing that you're infinitely better than you were a year before, but you're different. And maybe if you're different enough, maybe Minnesota isn't as big of a problem for you anymore. Running it back is a great sentiment if you are the champions. That's you getting swept up in championship fever. Yeah, bring everybody back. This was a perfect team. Run it back when you get bounced in the first round is not the right sentiment. I mean, this is quite literally the often expressed definition of insanity, that the Nuggets are doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. They're trusting that Aaron Gordon's hamstring is going to be healthy. They're going to trust what? That these guys that they drafted are going to suddenly break through. Julian Strawther, this is finally the year for him. Christian Brown going to bounce back and not be a complete waste of $25 million? That's a lot of ifs here. But that's what the Nuggets are banking on. They could go out and make moves. They could come close to what Minnesota offered for LaMelo Ball. They could come close to offering, if not exceed, what the Celtics got in return for Jaylen Brown. I just don't think they want to. And some of it's financially motivated. Part of it is, well, this doesn't make us better. I think there's a belief in that room that says we don't want to be just different. If we can't be better, let's stay the same. And I don't think that's the right choice to make. But it really appears it's LeBron or nothing. It's LeBron or welcome back to the court, your 2025-26 Denver Nuggets for the year 26-27. And I don't know how you can convince yourself that team, like San Antonio, felt more vulnerable last year than they're going to be this year. Right? Because now they're not inexperienced. They're not a young team anymore. And OKC, yeah, they've trimmed around the edges a little bit here. But I like what they did in the draft. And they retained, all of their top players. I just don't see how one can convince themselves that the Nuggets are going to get closer to winning a title next year by essentially putting out the same team that got bounced in the first round by Minnesota. 719-24-7. 13-13. Eric says on the LeBron sweepstakes, I don't know. I think the Warriors thought they could use Porzingis in a trade package to send to the Wizards for AD in a sign-and trade, but AD wants a max deal. So now LeBron is seeing if the Wizards can make the money work to bring him aboard, AD might be the key to all of this. But I don't know that the Warriors wanted Anthony Davis. But maybe that's not what matters here. Maybe they felt like, you know what, we get AD and we get LeBron, that's fine. If AD gets us LeBron, we're good. I don't see how. Like that, we have to cut it off somewhere. Okay, even though we're talking about LeBron wanting to play with his buddies and achieve total happiness or extreme happiness or whatever it was that Rich Paul said that LeBron told him that he wanted, like we got to cut off the list at some point. The realistic landing spots for LeBron James are not numerous. Okay, this is still the greatest player of his generation. He's still going to be a little bit choosy in where he goes. AD in Golden State, maybe that's a done deal. AD staying in Washington, I don't think that's and I saw that. Look, I saw someone throw out Washington. I don't see LeBron James playing in Washington. With AD and DeBonsta and Trae Young, I don't see it. So we have to cut off the list somewhere. And maybe it is the Nuggets, not because, I'm just trying to, keep the Nuggets on a small list of teams that could potentially land him, but I'm going off of Brian Windhorst, his characterization of the Nuggets being the outlier team. So if they're an outlier team, if they're a dark horse, however you want to phrase it, then that feels like a good place to cut it off. If it seems like a place would be more far-fetched than LeBron James coming to the Denver Nuggets, then they probably shouldn't be a part of that. So Golden State feels more realistic. Cleveland feels more realistic. Miami feels more realistic. Philadelphia, I think, is a lot more intriguing than they were 24 hours ago. Wouldn't you agree? So I buy that Philadelphia's in the mix here. And none of these places are perfect landing spots for him. And then you throw in Denver. Is that the extent of the list? I think it might be. And if LeBron wants to play with Anthony Davis so desperately, he can always ask his next employer to try and trade for him. I don't think that I don't feel like LeBron is coming to the Denver Nuggets right now. But I think it's more possible than it ever has been. And I think when the final decision is, I shouldn't use that word, when LeBron makes his choice on where he's going to play, I think we will see that the Nuggets were one of the teams he was down to. Now it's just incumbent upon the Denver Nuggets, who have a relationship with LeBron, who have a relationship with Rich Paul. By the way, Marvin Bagley, represented by Clutch, Peyton Watson, who reportedly the Nuggets are willing to pay $30 million to, is a Clutch Sports client. They have a relationship with LeBron. They have a relationship with Rich Paul. It's time to leverage that. It's time to use that. Convince them that this is the right place for LeBron James to end his career. (719) 247-1313. Again, the two most recent moves made by the Denver Nuggets. Former, I think he went number 2 overall a few years back. Marvin Bagley is now, he was in the Luka draft. And that was, he was taken before Luka. That was not a good decision, but it was Sacramento. So what do you expect? But he's coming to Denver to essentially take over Jonas Valanciunas' role and Tyus Jones back, so the Nuggets have their secondary ball handler to Jamal Murray. 719-247-1313 back after this. I saw a tweet that either we beat Belgium or we as Americans claim that it's rigged because Flo Balogun was wrongly ejected last night. It's pretty good. I think the U.S. can still win. I think they could still beat Belgium. Beyond that, even with Flo Balogun, I have reservations, certainly. But if they get to the quarterfinals, this World Cup is a smashing success. It's a huge building block moving forward to the next World Cup cycle. The two questions that I will have for that cycle: one, can they get depth? Because we've seen this team does not have depth, and who's going to be their coach? Because I don't think Pochettino sticks around. I think he's, like so many people are getting swept up in how awesome this is to have the world's biggest sporting event in your backyard in America, and they're playing on their home fields, whether it be Boston, Seattle, Santa Clara. I think he's getting a little bit swept up in it. The idea that he's going to stick around and enjoy it as much 4 years from now, I don't see it. But again, those are tomorrow's problems. Let's first focus on without Flo Balogun getting into the quarterfinals and then go from there. Portugal and Croatia coming up at the top of the hour. It continues to amaze me. You know, we talk about in sports all the time the unlikely heroes. And the one that comes to my mind, he's a good player, but with all the talk in the NBA Finals, OG Anunoby, right, being the if you were going down the list, OG Anunoby would be down the list a little bit in terms of likely heroes. But he was massive in helping the Knicks win a title, and he has one of the most iconic moments in New York sports history now. So this, happens, and you have the goalie for the Carolina Hurricanes coming in to replace Frederik Andersen, who, by the way, is now the Edmonton Oilers goalie. So he's the latest as they try to figure out how to get Connor McDavid a Stanley Cup. But you have these unlikely heroes, and that's what we love about postseasons in sports, right? And then you have this World Cup, which is just the best players. Now, Cape Verde's goalkeeper, I guess there have been some unlikely heroes, but the bigger story has been the stars. Right? Harry Kane saving England's bacon yesterday. And Messi has been unbelievable. And Kylian Mbappe and Erling Haaland, it's just, I've never seen a World Cup in which the 5 best players that we identify going in all deliver on a daily basis. And even Ronaldo had that first match. You're like, I don't know about Ronaldo. And then he's come back, and another chance for him against a very good Croatian side with Luka Modric has a chance to star again. But it is, I was out at Switchbacks training today. I was having a conversation with Garvin Matuslo. He and Duke LaCroix are back from representing Haiti in the World Cup. And, we were just talking about how crazy it was that you have all the best players being the best players every single match. And that's been one of the biggest storylines. It reminds me so much of the NCAA tournament, right? Because early on we did have Cape Verde. We did have some of these, DR Congo, who could have been, to be fair, DR Congo was pretty close to remaining in this tournament had it not been for Harry Kane yesterday. But we've had these good stories, but the good stories in the NCAA tournament, they're usually early, right? They're the first weekend. We're talking about, these massive upsets and players for Loyola Chicago and St. Peter's, and they're the early stories, but then they start to get phased out. It's starting to happen in the World Cup as well. And it's the big boys, it's the best players who are providing, and I don't think one is better than the other. I think they both have their place in everything. Part of what makes the NCAA tournament great is because you have these early stories like St. Peter's, like Loyola Chicago, these upsets. Gonzaga, before they became as much of a blue blood as Kentucky or Duke are these days. It's great because those are early. But then the tournament goes on, and then we settle on the best teams in the country and the best players in the country. And they ultimately win the tournament. I think it's the perfect way to go about it. I don't know that having, St. Peter's, or in this case, Cape Verde, all the way through to the title is what we deep down really want. I think Mbappe versus Messi, Holland versus Harry Kane, or yes, Flo Balogun against Harry Kane. But I think that's what's been great about the World Cup is we had the underdog, great early stories, and now the cream is starting to rise to the top. And it's France, and it's, even though I don't think Brazil is at the height of their powers, Brazil's still a really good team. And you have the story with Norway and France and Argentina. And this was something I was talking to Garvin about earlier, too. I don't know that any of this, what has happened, has changed your mind about who you think is going to win. France, Argentina. They were two of the favorites coming in. They still feel like two of the favorites. But it's the whole thing, right? You got the early underdog stories that are great, and you want to fixate on them. And then as the tournament goes on, it's just the best teams that ultimately are getting through, which we appreciate too. We appreciate greatness and want to see the best at what they do in the championship round, so to speak. And that's what it looks like we're going to get with the World Cup. Doesn't make it anything other than a smashing success to this point. It's been great. But Ronaldo and Modric at the top of the hour. We got Messi coming up on Sunday, and then some Monday Night Football with the U.S. and Belgium. Harry Kane taking on Mexico. The tournament's somehow getting better as we go along. I'm into it. Certainly is better than watching the Nuggets in free agency, right? We can at least say that. The NBA, I think, I don't know if it's a holiday, although I seem to remember, didn't Kevin Durant decide to go to Golden State on July 4th, didn't he? So, gotta stay vigilant over the weekend, but I think that the Jaylen Brown trade has just taken everybody aback here, that we're like, wait a minute, let's just hold up. Jaylen Brown got traded for what? All right, I need to take a minute, recalibrate, question my entire reality. what's going on in the NBA. So you have that, and then you have the holiday, and I think a lot of teams are saying we'll pick this up come next week. But the moves are not happening as much as they were to start here. It's been wild. And even you go back to like the LaMelo Ball trade, which happened before the start of free agency. I mean, the number of big names that have moved, or significant names, LaMelo Ball and Jaylen Brown, and soon it will be LeBron James and Giannis Antetokounmpo. We haven't had many off seasons like this. I remember, people always use it. Look, LeBron and Carmelo and Dwayne Wade are all going to be free agents at the same time, and it's going to be this free agent bonanza this offseason that we've never seen, and it never comes to fruition. This is about as close as we're going to get. And there was a rumor that that Kevin Durant might have went to Detroit in a potential three-way trade with for Jaylen Brown. Jaylen Brown would be going to Houston. Kevin Durant would be going to Detroit, and Şengün would be going to the Celtics. That would have been A, massive trade, and B, a better trade. But it didn't happen. But I told you the reason last hour on why this is going on. With the financial rules that are in place, with the existence of a supermax, and the influx of private equity, or at least people that think like private equity, all of a sudden, these guys that are getting supermaxes are now too expensive for their taste. And you're getting these big name players that in an NBA not so long ago, you wouldn't even think about them moving. But that's what's going on. I mean, it's made it interesting. And my bigger issue with the second apron is the carousel of NBA champions. That's what I don't like more than anything else. I like a champion to have staying power. And yes, in an ideal world, the Denver Nuggets would be the team with the staying power. I'll readily admit that. But I just look at this overall, 8 different champions in 8 years. I mean, the NFL has parity, but look, it's been the Patriots and the Chiefs and the Eagles and the 49ers there for a bit. Like a little overlap, a little consistency. I don't know if there's any walking back. And I have a sneaking suspicion that the owners actually like this. So, yeah, we'll see as we head into the holiday whether the NHL and NBA kind of take a break. But when you're a free agent like LeBron is, you don't got to wait on a team. If you decide you want to announce, then you can do that. And I remember Kevin Durant making his announcement that he's going to Golden State. So we'll see what happens over the weekend. 719-247-1313. More Drive Time Sports after this.